rising sun, a world of wonder just begun. Navigating through the highs and lows, a tapestry of stories every flight shows. Feel the rush as we ascend, winds of freedom, they never end. Moments captured in the air, every heartbeat, every dare. So buckle up, let's take this chance. In the sky we'll dance. A daily flight, our hearts in tune, chasing dreams beneath the moon.
Well, it's good morning from Gavin Bass 1 on his morning streams, and today's flight is all dedicated to his good friend Dan Gillespie. Used to have his little nickname as Dpmg. I'm sure he'll remember that and have a bit of a smile and a laugh at it because he looked like Pierce Morgan. Hi Dan, good morning. This is all for you, and it's a tutorial in how to set up a complete flight plan from Aldergrove to Bristol. We're in live time. It's a horrible morning. It's Aldergrove Airport. We're in stand 22, and I'm going to talk you through just exactly how to do the complete setup if you ever want to do it. It's quite long and tedious, but it's very satisfying whenever you get it right. So first of all, you go into the cockpit and you go over up to the Aldergrove, up to the upper panel, and first of all we turn on the batteries. So the batteries up here, 1 and 2, we'll turn them both on, and then we'll turn on the external power. From there then we turn on the fuel pumps, all 6 of them. And then we put on the nav and logo light to let people know, and the beacon light to let the ground crew know that the aircraft is live and that we're actually setting up our flight plan. From there then we turn on our master switch, and then we start. And then once the start button then comes green and it should say available, we will then turn on the APU bleed. So we'll just wait until the APU bleed light turns to green and says available, and at that stage then we'll turn on the bleed. There we go, it's gone available, and then we'll turn on this APU bleed. So there you go, we have the aircraft in a sort of setup position. So then what we do is we go on to this, the dashboard, and we go to the flight director, we turn that on. We go up to the top left hand corner and there's a button for CSTR. And that's all to do with constraints. And then we will set our range to about 80 miles, and then we'll go over and we'll put in our altitude that we want to fly at, which today will be 39,000 feet. And that's all set. We then go down to the speed brakes and we'll pull them up until it says armed, And that's exactly how we set up the aircraft live before we put in our flight plan. So if you toggle down to the flight computer, it's here. At the moment, it knows absolutely nothing. It doesn't know where we are, doesn't know where we're going. So we need to tell it all of that. And I'll talk you through, Dan, how to actually get all the information to put in here. And you can reference them through a couple of different apps that I'll recommend. So first of all, you go into INIT to initialize the flight. And we're going from EGAA, which is Aldergrove. You put a / in there, and let me just check with my Google the 4-letter code for Bristol. Bristol Airport 4-letter code, and that is EGGD. So we put in EGGD, EGGD. So we've got EGAA to EGGD, and you go up from and to, and you press that button until it populates, and then you go to return. So you can now see that we've got EGAA to EGGD, which is Belfast Aldergrove International Airport to Bristol. The cost index is something that the airliners use to save fuel, so it goes from 1 to 100 in economy. Most of us use about 50, so you put 50 in there, and our cruise level is 390, so we put 390 in there, and that's for 39,000 feet. That'll automatically tell you that it's minus 52 degrees at that height. So then at that stage you go into your flight plan, and you go up to the departing airport, which is Aldergrove EGGA. You press that button, and then you press departure, and it'll ask you what runway you want to take off. Now that's going to be determined by the wind. So I go into a little app then on my called Airport Weather. And once you go into airport weather, you can then type in, press the little search button, and you type in EGAA, and it'll bring up Aldergrove. And once you've got there, it'll give you all the details. It's telling us that the wind is 270 at 13 knots. So we will want to pick runway 25 then to take off, and we'll insert that. So that's done. So we've just told the flight computer that we want to leave from Aldergrove and we want to leave from runway 25. We then go to the destination, which is Bristol, which is EGGD. We press that. We go to the arrival, and it's now giving us different options to land. So at that stage then you go back into that app and you search EGGD. EGGD. Again, Dan, I will send you a copy of any of these apps that you need to know for the weathers. And this is the satisfying part of setting the whole flight up to make sure that it is successful. Now the wind at Bristol is 230 at 15 knots, so the best runway obviously then is, because we want to land into the wind, the wind's coming from 270, so we'll go for an ILS of 270, and we'll put in the temporary insert there. So from that we've now told the flight computer where we're going from, the runway we're taking off from, and the runway we're landing. And then what you need to do then is go into the PERF, which is the performance page. And if you press these buttons, it will highlight what V1, VR, and V2. So V1 is basically the point of no return whenever you're hurling down the runway. At V1, you've basically got a chance to stick the brakes on and stop. At VR, you want to actually rotate. And at V2, that's your absolute maximums, I think. If you go over to here, it says the flaps. We want the first stage of flaps for takeoff, and you put that in here, and you'll see the little one going. Okay, so we then go to the next page. It's all filled in for us. This one's all filled in for us. The destination's all filled in, and this is the one we want then for Bristol. So it's basically asking us for the information for Bristol, and the QNH in Bristol is 1001. Again, you get all that information. That's the barometric pressure, 1001, and you put the QNH in there. The temperature in Bristol at the moment is 9 degrees on the ground, which is 9. And the wind, as I said, is 230 at 15. So 230/15. And that's your wind and the direction of the wind. And if you go over to the MDA, that's your maximum decision altitude. So that's whenever you're landing, that's basically the minimum decision height, which I'll put in at 500 feet. So at 500 feet, you need to make a decision whether you're going to land or go round with full power. So that's our flight plan basically filled in. It's a basic one. We haven't added in any stars or SIDS or anything like that. So it's basically to and from Aldergrove to Bristol, and if you press the flight plan button, it'll be all there. And if you go up to the top and you go into your VFR map, you'll have a look there, and you can see that the VFR map will have plotted the route all the way across, down through there, and you can see the approach into Bristol has definitely been populated. So you can turn that off, and you can trust the flight instruments on the aircraft now. And at that stage, we can now ask air traffic control. If we go to the ground on air traffic control, we then want to go to number 8, which is request IFR clearance for our instrument flights to Bristol. So if you press that button, so despite the weather and the information that we've put in, it's actually told us that we want to change runways to 07, which is unusual because of the way the wind's blowing, but we'll go with the air traffic. We'll acknowledge that. And it's calling me Red Bull Golf, obviously, because I'm flying an A320 Neo. That can be purchased in Marketplace along with the liveries for Formula One, which has all the different liveries, the McLaren, the Ferrari, Red Bull, Mercedes, everything. Beautiful different liveries that you can get for the aircraft. So now, because it has actually given us, we need to go back into our flight plan. We need to go to our from, and we need to go back into the departure. And it's now told us to go from 07, and we'll insert that instead. And that's all you need to do, because it's given us a different a runway to take off on. So it's actually given us clearance now to, now that we've filed the flight plan, it has given us clearance. And then at that stage, then what we will do is we'll go to the outside view, look at it, it's absolutely lashing. Quite a large aircraft, looks like an A380 has just come in and parked beside me. At that stage then we will get the passengers on. So we go to air traffic, we go to ground services, and we'll ask them to connect the jetway, which is number 6. And you'll see the jetway connecting to the aircraft. And then if we go number 5, I'm using a keyboard. It's now going to ask the catering truck to deliver the refreshments for the passengers. And if we go number 4, you'll then see the baggage being loaded on. We don't really need to do anything else at this stage because we've already connected to the airport's external power. But if it was an airport that didn't have external power, you could actually request external power from this little machine here, and he will reverse up and put external power to the aircraft if required. So while all the ground crew are doing their things, you can see the baggage service is now heading towards the aircraft to load it. Again, Dan, these are a couple of little add-ons I've added just to give it a wee bit more realism. You can see the DNATA catering services there, and the baggage and the pushback tug is completely different from what's in the game. I have also added on from the marketplace Aldergrove Airport and the Bristol Airport, because it just gives the airport so much more realism compared to what the game offers you in the free version. It's not a hell of a lot of money, but it's well worth doing if you're going to fly from Aldergrove all the time, because it gives you so much more detail. And if you look out the cockpit view, you can see the gates 22 and the passengers all walking along here towards the bridge and stuff like that. So it does definitely give you a bit more immersion in the game. So we'll turn that master warning off, which is here. That's just letting us know that the passenger bridge is connected to the aircraft, and obviously before we push back we're going to ask him to remove that. So we'll just look outside and we can see that the catering has done its job. The baggage people have driven away from the hold, and that seems to be everything there. So at this stage then we go back into the cockpit, we go back up into air traffic, and we ask them for, we go to clearance and we ask for a taxi clearance to IFR to Bristol. So it's given us all this information about where we need to go. We need to go down towards runway 07. This is the track. Now, unless you know the airport or you have the charts for the airport, you could be a bit lost here. So what you actually can do is you can go to the assistant option, and it's actually up here, flight assistant, and all you would do then is turn this taxi ribbon on, and it will put a ribbon on the tarmac and show you where to go to head to your takeoff and holding point. So we'll acknowledge that clearance. And at this stage then we can then start setting up the aircraft for a full pushback. So we'll just go back up to the view and we'll turn the wing lights on, and we'll turn the strobe light on. You really don't need to do that until you're on the runway or near the runway, but because it's daylight it will not blind anybody. We'll turn the runway turn lights on and we'll turn the taxi light on, and the stage will ask over here on the right hand side, we'll ask the passengers to be seated and no smoking, which is a absolute given on the modern flight today. So it has given us all of the clearances we need, and all we need to do then is ask for a pushback. So we go back to ground and we ask the ground for a pushback, which is allowed, and we'll go to the exterior view and we'll watch the little tug come up to the nose wheel of the A320 Neo. Red Bull. Again, you can buy these things in Marketplace. If you want to give me a text or a phone call, I'll tell you what to do, where to get them. But whenever you see the tug lifting the front nose wheel up slightly, at that stage you need to obviously take the brakes off the handbrake and allow the tug to push the aircraft forward. So he's in place, the nose wheel's raised, and we'll take the handbrake off and we'll let him push us back. And at that stage then we can actually turn on engines 1 and 2, which are down here, 1 and 2, and we'll start the 2 engines. At this stage you want to put your speed brakes on. I have it mapped out on my little button, but it's this one here, anti-skid on. And you can hear the engine spooling up. And at this stage too, you can put your first stage of flaps on, which is here. And again, I have it mapped out on my keyboard to the first stage of flaps. As the engine spools up, we can then go to the outside view, and once you're happy with the distance that he's pushed you back, you can then ask him to stop the push back. And when he does that, you need to remember to put the brake on so that the thrust of the engines doesn't push the aircraft forward naturally. So because I know this airport quite well, I know where to go. We're going to be taking off from runway 07, and once we're in this state, we need to go in and go to your upper panel again. You keep your batteries on, but you do turn off the external power as you don't require it any longer. And you also can turn off the APU bleed, and you can turn off the master switch, which will also take this off. We don't need our landing lights yet until we line up on the runway. And you can see by the instruments here, everything's in the green, and that means the engines are ready to go. As I say, we have everything else more or less set. It's good practice to bring this, which is your altitude. It's showing that it's 700 feet, so if you go up to this, your barometric pressure, and you just keep taking this all the way down until that goes to 0, then you can clearly see that you're at 0 feet on the runway, which is QFE. We'll just get that absolutely accurate. So really you need to climb to at least 1,000 feet before you can start to engage autopilots or think about your next move. So that's actually a 2917. We've set 39,000 feet. We've got the constraints on, and we've got our flight director on. At this stage we can turn on our VOR and our second VOR, just in case we do need it in such a way. So we can then just take our brake off and taxi towards the holding point for 07. And you do that nice and slowly, and it's good practice to stay on the yellow lines that are marked out on the runway, and the taxi patterns. Stay away from other objects and other aircraft. See the EasyJet 320 in the background there. We'll just use our left thrust to take it round this corner very gently, staying nicely on the yellow line as we taxi down towards the holding point for 07. What an absolutely disgusting morning at Aldergrove, but you're actually better using live weather to improve your skills flying, as we will be doing a full instant approach into Bristol. And you can turn around and have a look at the package holidays aircraft, and we'll be passing the freight terminal for Aldergrove. Doesn't seem to be too much going on in the freight terminal. And as I say, you try and stay as close to this yellow line as you can, as it's just good practice. So we're taxiing on up here and we're heading towards the holding point for 07, past Woodgate Aviation. This little hut on the right hand side, a wee bit more than a hut, is where I used to have my aircraft service whenever I was flying. My little Piper Warrior. You had to leave it down there after so many hours to have its checks and servicing done. And they're very strict about that, obviously, because it's aviation. And that's Woodgate Aviation there on the right. We'll just slow down slightly to turn the thrust completely off and just let the weight of the aircraft take us down towards the holding point for 07. And you can see Woodgate Aviation just here. Normally a few private jets sitting about there. And a couple inside you can see here. As we turn round and you can see clearly now that the holding point for runway 07 is here. Let's say on this little sign 07. So we bring the aircraft to a full stop. On the yellow line, apply the brakes, go back into the cockpit view, make sure everything is set up as you'd like it, flaps are on. At this stage you can actually turn the taxi light to takeoff, and you can then engage the two landing lights. And we're more or less ready to go, just making sure that our speed brakes are on the armed position and our auto brakes are on here. All looking good. You can turn up the brightness of these instruments on these three panels if you need to, or if it's dark you can go down here and you can turn these glare shield brightnesses and the panel lighting brightness down there. So we need to then go to air traffic, and we need to go to clearance, and we need to go to the tower, and we need to ask takeoff clearance. So we've been cleared to take off on runway 7, and we'll acknowledge that, and we'll line up on the runway then. In this horrid wet morning. Because it's a wet morning, we want to take as much runway as we can in case there's any disasters, so that you can stop the aircraft in time if you need to. So we'll just go right down to the threshold of the runway and we'll make a turn. We'll just do an absolute U-turn here, using our left engines to bring the aircraft round. And we get onto the centre line. Take the throttle completely off now. and you apply the brake. So that's us lined up on runway 07, and we're going to take off and head to Bristol. So back to the cockpit view. This is what the pilot would see, which is pretty horrendous. You give the throttles about half power, just make sure all the instruments are reading right. You push your joystick forward to keep the nose wheel down, and you release the brakes and you apply full power. You keep it straight on the runway, and as you look at the speed here on the left, you see the 1. That's whenever you want, that's your V1, and the purple is rotate. And we'll just rotate on that one. And there's a wee bit of a crosswind. A nice steady rate of climb. Go to the outside view, and we'll lift the undercarriage. And we'll get the flaps away. As we pump up through the clouds, we can then press our autopilot button, which is this one, and our auto throttle, which is this one, and the autopilot takes over. We've had an instruction from air traffic. And acknowledge the handoff. And it's asking us to contact Scotland Centre, and that's what we'll do. As we pop up above the clouds. So it's asking us to stay on 2947. So we'll change that to 2947. And it's given us clearance then to to climb to 15,000 feet. So as we go up past 10,000 feet, we're at 8,400 now, we can then turn our landing lights off. As you go up here, and you can turn the taxi light and landing light to off, the landing lights both to off, and we can turn the runway lights to off, and we'll acknowledge the last transmission from air traffic. As we climb nicely up through the clouds towards Bristol. So we'll set this to 15,000. Maybe turn a few lights on, make panel lighting brightness with floodlights, just so we can see these things a bit brighter. Not that it's helped that much. We'll turn these up here just to get a bit more brightness as well. That's a wee bit better. Not much, but a bit. I'd like these lights to be a bit brighter. Don't know. see if we can do something here. That's helped a bit. And you actually set your throttles then to the autopilot position, which is here, as you can see, this green. We will then, we'll acknowledge that, but we're also going to ask for an altitude that's higher than 15,000 feet, because we're actually looking for 39. So we ask for an altitude increase, and unfortunately it only goes up in tens, so we'll go for 250 first of all. And we'll set this to 390 because that's where we're going to be going. 390 set, and we'll acknowledge the 250, and then we'll immediately ask for 350, and all we need now is another 4,000 feet. We'll acknowledge the 350. And all we now need is an altitude increase of 4,000 feet. So we go to number 4, we press that, and we've got our request for 390. And our autopilot will take us up there. At this stage you can obviously turn off your speed brakes and on arm here to 0%, and you make sure your speed brakes are off here as well. Just these three lights are off. So we're in good shape, and we're now heading over the sea towards Bristol. And if you look at your VFR map, it'll show you that you're tracking. Isle of Man's going to be on the left hand side. We might see it today, we might not, depending on the cloud cover. But we're well on our way. There's quite a bit of traffic in the air today, and all good. We need to acknowledge our last transmission for our traffic. Acknowledge that now. So it's cleared to 350. And we're at 250 at the moment. If we just zoom in, and we need to acknowledge the transmission again. So it's now asking us to hand off to Manchester, so that we start speaking to Manchester. We're now in the airspace that we will be speaking to Manchester. So tune into Manchester Centre and contact them. So you can hear, because I've got live traffic on, the air traffic is talking to all sorts of aircraft at the minute. So you have to actually listen out for your call sign and make sure it's you for instance, there's Ryanair he's talking to at the moment. So we don't want to be answering any of those calls. We just want to be concerned about our own call sign. So I don't think we'll hear too much from them in the meantime, as we are tracking beautifully along our flight plan that we put into our flight computer. We can now put our barometric pressure to the standard setting, which is 2992. And we can keep it there until we start coming towards the approach to Bristol. So there's 2992 set, that's the standard. And we're all in a good position now as we head towards Bristol. So on that note, I'm going to grab myself a quick cup of coffee and just put you in the exterior view and enjoy the view as we head towards the mainland. Be back in 2 seconds. So we've been cleared to 390 as my coffee's been made. By the way, Dan, you can go into your pilot's assistance here and you can actually turn the AI piloting radio comms on, and that will automatically answer all of those if you want, but I like to do it manually. Cheers. So back in the cockpit view, and there are several ways you can now do things. You can let it do its own thing, but I prefer to start setting my own bits and pieces. But I'll show you how to do that as we start the approach. You can see our airspeed here is 250 indicated, but if you look over here closely at the top, we're actually flying at a true airspeed of 458 and a ground speed of 440 miles or knots. So you can see that we're coming up 38,500, and she should start to level out, and the throttle's going back now all automatically as we level out, and you can see that the speed is being kept at 240, but you can actually increase this if you wish, as long as you don't overspeed. So how you do that is you go to the speed match, and you go here and you press that, and sorry, you go to this little button here and you change it to knots. And you can see now that we've got 239, but we could probably take it up to 260. And you do that by just increasing that to 260, and you can hear the engine starting to rev up, and we'll set that at 260. So we're in total control of the aircraft speed now, and we're also total control of the height. The only thing we're not in control of is the rate of descent or ascent, which is done over here on this button, the vertical speed control. So once we actually start getting clearance to descend, I'll show you how to do that as well and set up the aircraft for a perfect approach. At this stage now, because we're in the cruise, we can tell the passengers that they can walk about, so we can turn that off. We'll keep the no smoking sign on, obviously, but there's no smoking allowed on any flights nowadays, so that's a given. This range button adjusts the range on this instrument here to show you how far you're on. So it's 80 miles set at the moment, so from here to here is 80 miles. If you change that to 160, you can see that our airport is actually coming into sight. Let's see if there's any more brightness to be had here. Now it's telling us we're over speeding, so we don't want to do that, so we'll just pull that back to about 255, see if that takes that over speed away. And it's done that okay. So because the range is set to 160, it's 160 from the bottom to the top here. So you can see it's about 120, 130 miles to run before we're going to be going down. Now a good rule of thumb here is 3 times your altitude is the space and time that you need to get descending. So if you're at 39,000 feet, you multiply that by 3. So let's take 40. 3 4s are 120 miles, and you subtract the 3, which is 100 and just below 120 miles to run before you need to start descending. But Bristol and Manchester, whoever we're speaking to, will give us some instructions to descend whenever the time comes, all being well. But if they didn't do that, you would have to work out how much space you need to actually descend. So we've just been told to descend to 330, and we'll just acknowledge that. And this is where I'm going to show you how to do the actual vertical speed. So first of all, you set this to 330. We'll actually zoom in here and show you very clearly what to do. So 330, and then you press that, and then you go to the vertical speed, and you want to set that to about minus 1500 feet per minute is a nice steady rate of descent. And that's 1500 set, and you can see the nose starting to tip down as we head towards the destination Bristol. As you can see, we're starting to descend. We've kept our speed at 255, and the aircraft will not allow it to go too much over or under that because we have that set. Now you will get some speed instructions. It's asking us to make sure that we're descending, which we are. He's just being a bit impatient. If you wanted to increase that rate of descent, you would just turn that up, which we'll do. We'll take it down at 2,000 feet per minute just to satisfy his impatience. Okay, we've still got the range. It shows you here that we've about 120 miles to run, and we'll change that to 80 just so that we've still a nice bit of distance to plan our descent. I must admit these Red Bull and Ferrari liveries on this A320 Neo is they're beautiful, and in my opinion it's well worth paying for the airport, the bill for the airports that you're going to, especially if you do them quite often. They are so much more detailed than the ones that the game gives you. And as I say, they're not a whole lot of money and you only have to buy them once. So in total we've been flying and preparing for 54 minutes. We're on our descent now into Bristol. And because we're descending, there's not much turbulence. We could let the passengers walk about for a wee while longer, but at this stage we'll just ask them to put their seat belts on and just again check that no smoking's on. And then the next checks that we'll be doing is at about sort of 20,000 feet. We'll have another little look at a few things. So back to the autopilot, we'll just zoom in again, just make sure that we've everything set. We're set at 255 knots. We're descending to 33,000 feet. We're very coming close to that now, so you should hear it starting to spool down and level off. And our rate of descent is 2,000 feet per minute. And very shortly we'll get another instruction to go further down. So he's been giving us instructions to go to 250, and we'll acknowledge that instruction. And we'll zoom in again and we'll just tap this down to 250. And because we've changed that, we need to then change our rate of descent at 2,000 feet per minute again, which is all done. And we're now descending down to 250 towards Bristol Airport. Nice view of the cockpit there, Dan. Dan's also a massive Belfast Giants supporter, and they've just won the Challenge Cup this year, and they've also won the league. And this weekend then they try to do the treble by winning the playoffs at Nottingham, and that's played on Sunday, but they need to win their match on Saturday to do so first. I believe they're playing either the Steelers or the Panthers, I'm not too sure. Dan, you can probably let me know that if you can. But we're going to do a full ILS approach into Bristol, which will line us up nicely with the runway. Sometimes there's a slight glitch in the system, but we'll just try and make sure that that doesn't appear and all the instruments work properly as we go down into our approach. You can see here on the flight plan there's a little indication here that says decel. I'll explain to you what to do at that stage. Just before we get to that decel indication, there's a couple of things that we need to do on the flight computer. And we're approaching nicely, nice speed and a nice rate of descent, and we're going down now to the instructed 25,000 feet. The weather looks a bit nicer here than it was in Northern Ireland. What you should do, Dan, is register yourself on Twitch, and you can also do little streams of your flights and share them with me. I'd be keen to watch them, and if you make any mistakes or you need any help, I could do that. It's also good fun. You can chat away and do whatever you need to do, and maybe sometime the two of us could do a flight together. just let me know whenever it suits you, and we'll both meet at the same airport, and we can see each other and talk to each other, and we can fly together and land together. It'll be lovely. So we'll do that in the future whenever you have some time. Back into the cockpit view. So our range at the moment here is set to 80 miles, so we know roughly that we're here with this little crosshair, and the airport's here. You see the purple approach and the green indicators, and we know then that that's Bristol. That's only about 80 miles away now. 73 miles northwest. So he has asked us to he's actually asked us to descend to 3,000 feet. We'll just zoom in on that. The lighting's not very good today. We'll take that down to 3,000 feet. And again, you need to set the little indicator. 2,000. And it has also told us that he doesn't want us to fly any faster. Yeah, I did hear it, so I'll acknowledge that. So he doesn't want us to fly any more than 185 knots. So we'll just pull the speed back. That's because there's other aircraft obviously going into Bristol. So we'll take that down to about 200. 185 is a bit slow. We'll take it down to 220. And it'll find its speed in time. Because we're descending, it's not going to just go down. You could apply the air brakes if you wanted. And that would also take us down to that speed, and you can do that with this little button here. As you can see, that slows you down, and you can slow us down to 220 if you want, which that's going to do. And once you're approaching that, you can then take the air brakes off again. And that'll keep us nice and steady at 220. It might increase a little, but that's okay. And at this stage we can then set the range to 40 miles. So from here to here is 40 miles. And as I said, remember, I'll just go back to 80 again to show you this little message here at decel. So we're only a few miles to that instruction. So what you actually need to do is you need to go to your flight computer, and you need to go to perf, and you see here activate approach phase. You press that and you confirm, and that will activate all the information that you put in for Bristol Airport, and it'll give you everything we need, obviously, for the ILS approach to Bristol. So we're holding 220 knots, we're descending nicely, and we'll stick that back to a range of 40 so that we can see clearly where we're going. Again, you can always reference your VFR map and it'll show you that you're on track. And you can zoom in and zoom out here, and you can see all the different airports and aircraft that are in there around you. These little white aircraft are live aircraft in the vicinity at the moment. I'll turn that off. So we're descending down to 3,000 feet with a bit of cloud to punch through here, and At 10,000 feet we can then start doing a few approach checks. It's all going nicely to plan at the moment. Passengers are very comfortable. They've got their seatbelts on. Just check that again. Always check, check, check. Can't do enough checks. All good. And air traffic will talk to us all the way down to the runway, obviously giving us different clearances, as in ILS clearance and then clearance to land. Sometimes whenever you approach an airport, it'll tell you to go round. That's because there's an aircraft landing in front of you. And at that stage then you just have to either obey the air traffic or just do whatever you want, really, as it's only a game. Sometimes you just don't have time to do all of that, but it'll just put you on a completely different approach and you have to land again. Punching through a pretty big cumulus cloud. Quite black. Does absolutely no harm at this stage to put on some icing. Airframe icing's on, engine icing's on, engine 2 icing on, and the windshield de-icing is on. And that just makes sure that your airframe doesn't ice up or your windows don't ice up when you're coming in through cloud, especially, as there can be frozen particles of rain in there, and that's not a good thing. Holding a nice steady 220 as we approach. One thing we need to look out for is the QNH and the barometric pressure for the runway that we're going to land. So we're going to get information from air traffic, and at that stage we need to set this to the instructed setting. So we'll listen out for that. So some checks that we need to run now is we need to make sure that our speed brakes are now armed, and also we need to make sure the anti-skid's on, auto brake is on. And as we come down through 11,000 feet, approaching 10,000 feet, it's good practice then at 10,000 feet to put your landing lights on. We'll put the runway turn lights on as well, and then we'll put our landing lights on. If we go to the outside of the aircraft, you can't really see it very well in the light, but the two landing lights are on, and quite a nice clear day below 10,000 feet where we're going. In towards Bristol. That's probably the Bristol Channel in front of us there. And at this stage we can turn down our range to 20, so that we can see that we're only 20 miles range now as we descend through 10,000 down to our instructed 3,000 feet. and I would just turn the rate of climb back a wee bit now, or the rate of descent back to about 1,000 feet a minute, which is set. I would also bring the speed back to about 200. Again, you can apply a little bit of air brake, bring it down to that magic 200. And we've got that nailed. And our beautiful Red Bull A320 Neo is in good shape for our approach to Bristol. Must say I love the livery. And we go back into cockpit view just to make sure that everything is in good shape. Again, Dan, you can assign different keys on your keyboard to do different things. So I have mine assigned, obviously, for cockpit view. I can press my space bar and I can go to the exterior view. And if I want, I can press D and I go to drone view. And in the drone view, you can really look round. And you can see all different angles. You can zoom down into this lake. You can do whatever you want. You can see the aircraft in the front. Oh, it's a lovely view, as you can see. So, back into cockpit view, because we're starting to get into the serious part of the landing. As we descend through 7,000 feet, heading towards our instructed 3,000 feet at the moment. We'll just make sure that air traffic hasn't said anything to us lately by scrolling down to our last instruction. If you're not happy with things, you can ask them to give you vectors, or you can select a different approach, but we're good, we're all set, and our whole approach mode is set up. We're still on autopilot, so the aircraft will do exactly what it's told. But whenever we're about 2,000 feet away from the runway, we'll probably do a fully manual landing. So again, check, 200 knots, descending to 3,000 feet. This is armed. And everything is set up for our landing at Bristol. What you should do, Dan, is have a watch at this video and try and replicate the flight, and get a Twitch account set up and do it yourself, and talk me through it, and let me see what you can do. I'd be very interested to see if this helps you do a professional flight as it would be in real life. Obviously there's a lot more things that go on that we're not covering today, but this is the simplified version. Beautiful bridge on the left hand side there. So you can see our approach pattern starting to appear on the flight instruments here. We're going to be coming in, we're going to take a left hand turn round, swing round left, and it normally gives you about a 10-mile final into the runway that we're going to land on. So yeah, we're coming quite close. We're coming down through 4,000 feet, and we're going to be waiting for instructions from air traffic now to set our barometric pressure. So the airport should be on our nose really at the moment, somewhere down below us here, and we're going to be swinging right round and landing on that runway. Just awaiting some instructions now as we approach this, and then I'll show you how to do an ILS approach, which automatically lines you up with the runway. And you can hear the aircraft now starting to engage different things to level us off at 3,000 feet.
2,500.
It's just given us an indication that we're at 2,500 feet because of the ground level. So again, that's why we need, here we go. So it's 29.58 is what we want to set here. It just gives us that instruction. So you can see that's actually going up the way because that's the barometric pressure at the airport. So it's asking us to acknowledge that, which we will do. And we're levelling off nicely at 3,000 feet at 2958 in the settings here. So we can now set our range to 10. That gives us a really good close-up angle of our approach, and just make sure that the aircraft is tracking it accordingly. So Dan, what you do is you set up a Twitch account, you link that Twitch account to your flight simulator or your Xbox or your PC, whatever you're doing, and then everything you do on screen then can be recorded live, and you can then do a running commentary. Okay, we've been asked to descend to 2,500, which we'll do. Now, at the moment, it's just going in increments of thousands. So if you press the inside here, it then changes it to hundreds. And we can change that to 250 instead of 2,000. And we'll acknowledge that instruction, which is done. It's quite a low approach to Bristol. Normally it wouldn't let you go so low coming into an airport, but we'll do what they say. I normally wouldn't like to be going down towards 2,500 feet at this stage. I like to be at about 3,000 feet with 10 miles to go, but this is what they do at this airport, so this is what we need to do. Now at this stage we'll decrease the speed to about 190. 190 set, 190 set here. And again, you can see clearly the pattern that we're going to be doing. Now, because we're going to be turning left onto this final into the runway, we need to then turn our ILS on, which is this button. Now, what that does, that sets a little purple diamond down here and a little purple diamond here. Whenever we turn round this corner onto the finals, this purple diamond will come in towards the center, and when it does, you then press the locator button, and that keeps it on the center line for the runway. And whenever this little purple diamond comes up to this line, you then press your approach button, which is this button here, and that will also then put the aircraft in full automatic landing mode, where you can just sit back if you want, but I prefer a manual landing because it's much more challenging. You can see this. So it's telling us to descend to 1,900 feet. I don't really want to do that just yet because it's not normal to be so low. But you can see this little diamond coming in now at 3,000 feet. And as we turn this left-hander, and we'll acknowledge that just. So 1,900 feet set. .900 feet is set, and we're turning then into the finals. As we can see, this little purple indicator will come into the middle, and you need to be ready just to press the locator button at that stage, and that'll line us up to the approach for the runway that we're going to land on. So just as this little purple button, this diamond comes into the yellow line, as it hits the yellow line, you want to press the locator button, and we'll just bring our speed down to 180. And we'll acknowledge that last instruction as well, which is the handoff. And that's coming into the middle, so we want to press the locator button right now, which we've done. And we'll contact this Manchester. And at this stage we want to put first stage of flaps on. And you can see the runway ahead here. And we'll put our second stage of flaps on. And your flaps are down here, by the way. That's your flaps here. Now on the second stage of flaps, you then can put the landing gear down, which we'll do. You can see the landing gear coming down. And back to cockpit view. And you can now see this little diamond coming into the middle, and you'll press approach at that stage. And she takes herself down towards the runway totally automatically, and looks after your height and everything. So we'll put our third stage of flaps in, and then our fourth stage. And we'll turn our auto throttle off and our autopilot off, and we'll just go in for a manual landing now. Taking the speed off, and we'll try and nail about 160 knots for our landing, maybe slightly less as we come in to Bristol Airport. Fully manual. Don't let the throttle go too far back, keep it nicely, and keep that nose on the centre line. There's obviously a bit of a crosswind. As we get lined up, and we'll use a bit of rudder now to keep the nose straight, and we'll lift the nose ever so slightly. 40 feet, 30 feet.
20. 3 knots, drive.
And that's it, and we'll put it into reverse thrusts to slow us down. And we'll taxi to the end of the runway now. Back, we'll do a U-turn here. Taxi to our stand. And we'll park in here where they seem to have a steps and all organised for us. Nicely lined up, sorry, in stand 24. Apply a little bit of brakes, put our brakes on, take the throttles down, go to our cockpit view, and we can go to our overhead view, and we can turn on our APU, and that gives power to the aircraft while the engines are off. Once this boy lights up available, we'll turn that on. We'll put the exterior power on too. And it's given us available, so we'll turn the APU bleed on, and we can go down and we can turn off engines 1 and 2. And we'll do that here, engines 1 and 2 off. Go outside. And you can hear the aircraft spooling down, but we still have the little engine at the back of the aircraft. And we can turn our landing lights off. All off. We can allow the passengers to unbelt. The no smoking signs now off, and the only lights that we really require on at the moment is our beacon light and our nav and logo lights, and that allows the ground crew to know that we're still live, and we'll go to ground services. And we'll ask for our ramp connection, if there is one. And there's the ramp. And we can ask for baggage. We can also ask for catering. And at this stage then I would also ask for fuel supplies to put more fuel in for a return journey whenever you want to do it. So it's all happening. And we'll allow those people off the aircraft into the terminal building as their baggage is now being collected and the old catering stuff taken off and new stuff putting on. Let them do their stuff. And that's more or less the end of our flight, Dan. Showing exactly from start to finish how to do a flight plan from Aldergrove to Bristol. You don't need to set up anything in the world map. All you do is you position your aircraft in the airfield in Aldergrove with no destination set, and then you do everything then via the computer. So that's everything done, and it's goodbye from Gavin Bass 1 to Dpmg, Dan Gillespie, my friend, and I hope this has been helpful, and goodbye.